Has anyone else noticed that when Kyoko isn't in the picture, Ray really shines as a character? What I'm getting at is he develops. We see sides of him we haven't seen before. We see how much he's progressed since the start. And every time Kyoko is in an episode and she's like the central focus, it's like she's dragging Ray back down to the ground and throw him into the world of black and white instead of him showing color and these emotions that he was showing in this episode. Has anyone else noticed that? Has anyone else noticed the contrast between these two separate like themes of the series with Kyoko even when Ray is not near her and he's interacting with others? Has anyone else noticed that? Because this episode with Ray and Shimada, it showed a side of Ray which once again shows how much he is developing, how much he is changing, how he's able to interact with everyone in society. And so let's dive straight headfirst into that first. So Ray, what got me about his character development in this episode and how much he has changed is that for the first time it seems like he had to express himself. And what I'm getting at is when he was sitting there at the table in the workshop, and he was looking at the shogi board, and, he had to, analyze it and see what was happening here, what did Shimada do wrong, when did, everything turn against him, what was happening here. Ray had to explain what he felt about the board with his own emotions and how he felt. He had to make sure he told everyone. And the way this went about was showing that Ray is not used to this. He's not used to having to, convey his emotions to others. Because when he does shogi, when he is doing, matches and stuff, he keeps everything locked inside of him. All his emotions are usually locked up inside of him, and nobody really gets to see what he's really thinking or how he feels about a certain match. Maybe his, opponent, they know how he feels or how he's thinking, but overall, everyone on the outside, they really don't know. They really don't know what Ray is thinking, and Ray never really tries to express himself. He tries to stay emotionless, or he tries to stay detached. But in this case, because he's in the workshop, and he was being told to just kind of analyze this board, and what happened here, when he says it's kind of disgusting, it was kind of Ray's, attempt of trying to communicate with others, but also him to kind of just throw his emotions out there for others can understand how he truly feels about it. And I love that scene. It just shows how awkward he is of explaining himself and how awkward he is at trying to interact, but at the same time, he is actually trying, and I love that scene, and I wonder how many picked up on that when it came to this episode, with seeing Ray trying to explain himself and try to figure out what he needs to say about the board besides just saying it's disgusting. That was a great scene. It was a really good scene, probably by far one of my favorite scenes of the episode, just because of the way that was showing Ray's development. Now, besides that, let's talk about Shimada for a second, because the first half of the episode, even though it shows Ray's development, it actually focused on Shimada and what was going on with him. And he's been getting a lot of development recently, and the recent episodes of March Comes In Like a Lion has focused on his character quite a bit and how much, this upcoming match really means to him. Because if he has consecutive losses, he's not going to be able to go to his hometown and do a match in his hometown and have a lot of meaning there, because that holds a lot of weight on his shoulders. He wants to be able to do this match in his hometown, but if he loses consecutively, he's not going to be able to do that, which that's something that's going to really hurt him and just make him feel like shit. And that's kind of his overall goal. And these recent episodes have been showing how he's trying to fight back against the top shogi player, number one, and how he's trying to, at the very least, win and be able to go to his hometown and play a match. And I love the way he's been getting a lot of characterization in development, especially in this episode. We see how much shogi means to him, but also how far he would go after a loss to learn from his mistakes. And this is kind of how we can view any mistake in real life, because it's like more along the lines of how people act once they make a mistake. See, Shimada, he does a perfect example of trying to learn from your mistakes. Have any of you ever heard of, like, if you make a mistake, obviously, at the very least, you're going to learn from it. You'll learn from your mistakes. That's something many probably have said in your life, and that's kind of what Shimada is trying to do. He realizes he fucked up a long time ago, and, he lost a match in shogi, and he was looking at the board, and he constantly analyzes it, and he even goes along to say he remembers how the board was, and he throws it there, and he knows where each piece was, what went wrong. He's looked at this board most likely countless of times, And when you actually see him discussing this, you see that he's trying to figure out what really happened. When did the board turn against him? When did he actually lose? Was it because he gave up in the middle once the board was set, or did he actually lose before it even began? Was it because of how he was feeling as a person? And we've already seen examples of this from Rei as a person as well, when he thought, he could actually win against Shimada, but he lost because he wasn't seeing the bigger picture. And that's kind of what's happening here. Shimada seemed to have lost this match because of the way the board was set up in the first place. Before the board was even finished, the way it was going, it was already bad. It was already bad to begin with, and it was not looking good for him since the very start. But he's trying to learn from this, and he's trying to confront his issues, his problems, and not trying to run away from them. That's exactly what you see in this episode when he's looking at this and he's asking Rei for his information, like, what did I do wrong here? What do you think I should have done? Why do you feel like this? And that's kind of what he was asking. He's like, what could I have done differently? He's trying to learn from the mistakes. And that's something that any character, any person in real life should do. I mean, many people in society make mistakes. Everybody makes a mistake in their life. Nobody hasn't made a mistake. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Everyone in their life has made something, even if it's something very small. Everyone has made a mistake in their life, and you cannot lie about that. And that's kind of what's going on here. You can make a mistake, but sometimes you might not realize you made a mistake, or sometimes you might not realize the point of how you made this mistake, and sometimes you need to learn from that experience to learn how you might not make that same mistake again. And that's what's happening here. Shimada is trying to learn from his mistake for he doesn't make it again. So good character development, good characterization and development for his character, and I respect the way March Comes In Like a Lion is kind of characterizing, Shimada. So besides that, let's talk about the second half of the episode. So the second half of the episode focuses on seeing the sisters and their interactions with Rei, but also how they view Rei's sister. And Rei as a person, we get to see like a different side of him, which is very awkward, but at the same time really fits the scene and what majority would probably say if they were in that exact same situation. Let's look at the scene to when the two sisters, Hina and Momo, enter into Rei's apartment. When he invites them over, you see how he's trying to figure out, okay, what should he, give them to drink? I mean, usually he would give an adult tea, but what should he give them? Should, he give them milk or something? He has no idea what he should really give them, and he's trying to figure it out. But overall, he comes to the conclusion that he can just give them milk, which just shows you how he interacts with guests, because he's not used to having guests at all. He's used to the normal guests and maybe adults, but he's not used to actually taking care of children, which shows a little bit of, Rei's character of how he interacts with people like coming into his apartment. But on top of that, though, we get to see another side of him when they start questioning him, like, about the food. For instance, like, oh, we came to pick up the boxes and all that, the bento box. We were just seeing how you liked it. Did you enjoy it? And Rei's like, oh, I enjoyed it. It was really good food and all that. And we know, as the audience of the show, we know Rei didn't get to eat pretty much anything at all. Only 2 pieces. It was barely anything at all. And his sister Kyoko ate everything. And the poor man didn't get to, cherish it at all. And obviously, he couldn't say that. He couldn't say, oh, I didn't get to eat it, because it would be disrespectful and rude if he said, like, he didn't eat it and his sister ate it, because it would make him look like shit. At the same time, it'd make his sister look like shit. Even though Kyoko, she's kind of messed up and evil, and she really is despicable, and she puts Rei down constantly, Rei does care about her, and he doesn't want to harm her any more than she's already been harmed, because she is a broken person, and so he lies. He lies and straight up says, like, oh yeah, it was fun, I like the wasabi, trying to make it look like his argument is valid. For instance, his lie, he's trying to show, like, yeah, he did eat it, even though he didn't. He was trying to make it seem like he did eat it, because he was saying, like, what food was inside, what was good, and all that, like, oh yeah, this is my favorite thing in there, even though we know he didn't eat it. So Rei was trying to lie to them to make sure they knew that, like, oh yeah, he ate it, but in reality, he did not. So it shows what type of person he is. He didn't want them to feel embarrassed. He didn't want them to feel upset or disrespected, and that's kind of what he was doing in that scene. Even though it seemed like it was awful that he was lying to them, he was actually doing them a favor, because if he would have said that, it would have made more problems than it was worth at all. Because, I mean, it would have made it to where Kyoko looked even worse than she already did, but also it would make it to where the sisters would be upset, and they would feel offended, and they might not ever make anything for Rei ever again, or they would probably just be upset with his sister, and then they'll say things, and he just doesn't want to deal with that problem at all. So it shows what type of character he is and how he tries to avoid these little problems here and there throughout, his life. And so, yeah, I mean, great way to showcase that scene, a very mature scene to show how many would interact with people around them if they were, this topic popped up. Like, oh, did you enjoy that even though you didn't get to eat it? And it's just little things like that that happen in everyday life. And I'll tell you right now, probably many have been in that exact same situation where you say something but you just don't want to offend anyone because of something like that, like just something simple about food or something, or shoe size, whatever. You'll just lie about it just because you just don't want to hurt them at all. So yeah, besides that, Akriti actually finds out the truth about Ray's sister. He's like, oh, so the whole reason like he acts like he does is thanks to her. So she is the main problem. Like, she is the reason why he's like he is, why he moved out in the first place, is because of her. She's putting the pieces together, and she's like, it's actually kind of worse now knowing that was his sister he was talking to begin with, because they didn't act like brother and sister at all. And in reality, if that's the truth, that would mean that it just shows the relationship and that they're not on good terms at all. And she actually picked up on that and was like, oh crap, this ain't good. This is why he's like he is. This is why he's so distant. This is why his world was in black and white. And she's starting to realize this, and so Akriti now knows the truth about him and what happened to him in his life. Even though she doesn't have the full picture, she kind of knows the reasons now why he acts like he does. So yeah, episode overall was a very good episode. I had a lot of fun watching it, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next, and I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.